Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So I went and looked in the Luach. It's a Hebrew word meaning calendar, and when we say Luach in this context, it means there's a little book that tells us which Torah readings happen in which week and how much of the Torah. So there were two versions of how to break down this particular Torah portion, and it was my fault for not looking up what we had on the Beth Torah spreadsheet. I just looked at the Luach. My apologies. So now you have to pretend that we did read the Ten Commandments in order for the sermon to make sense. But I think most of you are familiar with the Ten Commandments. Adiv and I have had many wonderful moments together as a couple. There were two marriage proposals, one by candlelight and one on a busy street corner next to a dumpster. I'll leave you to guess which one of us proposed in which scenario. Then there was the love we felt surrounded by our friends and family at our chuppah. Of course, the birth of our children, the excitement of buying our first home. But these moments are not daily experiences in a marriage. Our relationship may be fueled by these amazing moments, but it cannot be sustained by them. This week, our date night was thrown awry when we realized that what we actually needed to do was buy groceries. This is usually Adiv's chore for our household, and I actually really don't like going to the grocery store, but we decided that we would make it date night at the grocery store. We played a fun little game called Who Can Find the Nutritional Yeast for the Largest Amount for the Cheapest Price. We bantered, and we may have even danced down the dried fruit aisle in Sprouts to the terrible music playing. It took a bit of effort, but we did turn grocery night into date night. Relationships are sustained by the daily efforts we make, and our relationship to God and our spiritual lives is no different. In this week's Torah portion, there is the reading of the Ten Commandments. And afterwards, God wants to continue speaking, and the children of Israel say to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will obey, but let not God speak to us, lest we die." It seems like the Israelites are opting out of the opportunity to have God speak to them directly in favor of using Moses as a go-between because they're afraid of the intensity of encountering God. In a more direct way, they chickened out. But in a classic Hasidic move, interpretations of the text are turned upside down from the plain meaning. And by asking to use Moses as the go-between, they weren't opting out of something, they were actually opting into something. The Degel Machane Ephraim, the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the modern Hasidic movement, says there are two types of religious experiences. There are the ones that pour down from us as a gift from heaven, and then there are the ones that result from choosing divine service. The former requires no effort on our part since it's by the grace of God. It's a gift. But the latter requires us to strive toward our goal of spiritual connection and use our own spiritual strength to find God. According to the Hasidic interpretation of the verse, when the people request Moses speak to them in God's place, they're not expressing fear of the intense divine encounter. They say, "We prefer the longer, more arduous path to God, the path that takes more work from us to forge a relationship." But why would they want the more difficult path? Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, a modern rabbi from the Institute of Jewish Spirituality, explains, there's a difference between a flash of spiritual insight and direct experiential knowledge. That flash of spiritual brilliance may fuel our religious practice and motivate us to continue seeking God, but it's not reliable or sustainable, and therefore it cannot transform us. Those moments in life where we can't help but feel the beauty, the wonder, the mystery of being alive in a vast cosmos are inspiring, but they're short-lived and they don't sustain a spiritual life. There are no shortcuts to our relationship with God. The breathtaking moments that cause tears of gratitude or amazement, They're short-lived and they're unpredictable. But the daily ritual practices, like saying Moda Ani in the morning, I'm thankful to be awake, or the ethical practices daily, like putting a quarter in the tzedakah box, help us cultivate our awareness of how amazing the world is. And those practices are reliable and consistent ways to live a spiritual life. The Slonimer Rebbe, another Hasidic master, teaches it's the difference between receiving revelation at Sinai on Shavuot and the 49 days of preparation preceding it when we count the Omer. The fire and lightning of Sinai dazzles the eyes, the heart, the mind, the soul. They motivate us to adopt daily practices so that we can experience such encounters again, but it's the quiet, consistent journey of counting each day leading up to the pinnacle of receiving Torah. That's what makes Sinai possible. I love looking at our wedding photos and the pictures taken as we coo over our newborn infants. When I look at those photos, I fall in love with Adiv all over again. But it's the I love you in the checkout line at 8:30 p.m. on a Thursday night that really keeps us together. I feel God in sunrises and magnificent vistas. I feel God in sacred moments like Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur, or hearing someone who has just joined the Jewish people read Torah for the first time in her community. But it's the everyday recitation of the Shema, or trying to remember to call someone in the community every day who is sick or scared or sad. That's what sustains my connection to God. The Israelites requested Moses to speak to them at Sinai not because they were afraid of God, but because they wanted to begin as they intended to continue, with a quiet, steady effort on their part to maintain the relationship. May we be blessed with creating thousands of daily experiences that help us realize we are blessed and God is close to all who seek. Shabbat Shalom.